It has been a minute since Neo has released a new handheld or announced anything as of lately. The most recent thing I believe was their Neo 3 handheld, which was pretty cool, but I'll be honest, the whole modular controller thing was kind of lame and way less practical than I thought it was going to be. Like, if you're a person who likes having a 6-button controller or knows exactly what they want in that specific situation, I'll be honest, I'm not one of them. It's just kind of lame and expensive. But one device in particular that I feel like was only less than a year old at this point is the iNeo Pocket S. But then I got to thinking, I was like, oh, yeah, that device released last year. So it's almost a year old, but given by the time the next one comes out, it will be a year old. But at the moment, it's not exactly a year old quite yet, which is actually kind of surprising. A lot of people, including myself, was not a huge fan of the Pocket S. There are definitely some people who enjoyed it, and it's by all means not a terrible handheld, but I would consider it very overpriced for what it was. On paper, it had the specs to compete with the likes of the Odin 2 Pro and Portal and whatnot, but it was just so much more expensive with a chipset that had very little driver support for the emulation community, where the performance difference wasn't really there. It had features that, while very cool and amazing, not necessarily something that matters a whole bunch. Like, it has an amazing IPS 1440p screen, but is it really necessary for a 1440p screen on a 6.3-inch device? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's very similar to how the Legion Go was 2560 by 1440 or something, or like whatever the taller aspect ratio version of that was. It was just unnecessary. A lot of games weren't going to run at that resolution, and for the vast majority of people, they were running sub 1080p potentially on the game they were playing, so it was, on the average, just not entirely necessary. And sort of the same situation for the Pocket S2 and the original one are inevitably going to have, is because it just really wasn't that necessary given the physical size of the screen. I remember Sony back in the day with their Xperia 4 devices, I believe, had 4K screens, and while incredibly pixel dense, just a wasteful drain on the battery. A needlessly high resolution panel for a device that you could, even if it was 720p, have to put the phone an inch in front of your eyes to see the pixels in the first place. So it's just a waste. It's unnecessary. While incredibly cool technology and amazing to see come to an emulation handheld, it just felt unnecessary. So with this new generation, they're continuing to have that same 1440p screen. It has the same good, decent battery life, but it has the all-new Snapdragon G3 Gen 3 processor, which, not in the same vein as the G3X line, but very similar. It's going to be roughly 30-ish% faster across the board, which is very cool and amazing to see. But considering we don't have pricing information, that remains to be seen whether or not it's going to be actually a good value if it continues down this path of in excess of $400 for an admittedly premium build, but in the greater scheme of the whole industry, not the best deal you could possibly have, given the only marginal difference in performance if you're talking about emulation, and yes, noticeable difference in Android gaming, but not enough to necessarily warrant hundreds of extra dollars to be spent. Your typical Android smartphone would be faster if you have bought it within the last couple years. They have also upgraded their whole effect sensing joysticks for an upgraded and more precise control. I really wouldn't have much to say about it. The analog sticks were fine. I'm sure these ones are going to be fine too. Something I am happy to see is the CNC aluminum, all in from one piece of aluminum design language. It is honestly very nice looking handheld. And I'll be honest, it is a beautiful thing to look at. It is hardware design is on point this time around. Same thing for the last generation, but it just sort of refines the design, a bit more rounded, less boxy, and it looks fantastic. It carries that same one flat pane of glass across the whole thing. Technically, it's called zero bezels, but it's just the fact that it's all covered by the same sheet of glass. It's not that it's bezel-less, it has bezels, it's just covered. That part of marketing has always bothered me a lot, because it does have bezels, it's just all the same thing now. It's just stupid. The next upgrade that they're bringing to the Pocket S2 is Hall Effect linear triggers, which in my experience have been nice, but typically feel no different from normal triggers, but their whole thing is more reliability, not necessarily better long-term health, because it's very rare in my opinion that I find myself thinking, oh, my trigger died. Frankly, in my experience, I've had shoulder buttons go out quicker than any other button. So where are my Hall Effect bumpers? Come on, man, I need my Hall Effect bumpers. While we're at it, why don't we make the face buttons Hall Effect? Everything must be Hall Effect. I'm being facetious. I don't actually mean that. Moving right along, the next development that they're introducing is an updated version of their Android software. Essentially, their IS-Space versions thing. It's fine. It has been kind of interesting to see how it developed over the last few handhelds that they've released, but generally speaking, it's sort of just average in comparison to the rest of these Android-based systems that have controller mapping software and stuff to help manage the system and themes over Android. It's fine. It's not my favorite, but it's also not the worst thing out there, so it's nice to see some better development in the whole ecosystem, but I still will be remaining on Daijisho, which is my personal favorite and has been one of the best looking and experience-wise Android frontends that I've used ever since I first started to use it 2 years ago. Since this handheld is using a lot of the similar parts and features from the original Pocket S, I would love to see that result in some cheaper prices. I'm not asking for it to be hundreds of dollars cheaper, but maybe $100, $50, something like that, because the upgrades here I feel like don't justify or necessitate a whole new handheld, which doesn't really feel that old. Another thing about the design that I do appreciate is that there are 0 back buttons. No paddles, no nothing, because for me personally, I find those utterly useless. I understand that there's plenty of situations where those are super useful to you, but for me personally, I have never really liked them, especially on devices like the Steam Deck where they're large and very noticeable, and I just clickety-clack on them all the time, and it bothers me to no end because it's just distracting. I feel it, I press it, it makes noise, I don't like it. I don't know if it's just me, but it bothers me a lot, and I love to see that this handheld doesn't have back buttons, because for me, it just feels way better to feel in the hand and causes me not to get distracted nearly as often. I don't know, maybe it's an ADHD thing, but for me, it's not been particularly helpful. I also just don't play games that necessitate that. I'm not like a pro Call of Duty player who remaps sprinting or melee to those kinds of things. It's just been too much, or just too little of a use case for me to actually want them on any other handheld. But if you made it this far into the video, why not like and subscribe? I'm sure I'd be happy to have you return to my channel. But now that we have reached the end, I would love to hear what you guys think. Have you been interested in the Pocket S? Are you waiting for the Pocket S2 to come out now? Is this a handheld that you actually would want to use or purchase? Because by all experiences, this thing is gonna be expensive, and I'm not sure it's going to be worth it. I would love to hear what you guys think down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media coverage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.